Welcome back, everybody. The Degenerates. You are the official first episode of 2025 for us. Although we did shoot a little bit, I've shot some content here and there. But like a first official guest, that's really awesome. Today we have Shaun Salvaje.
Yes.
With us. You got to tell us about you.
Damn, you said it right.
Right?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I get Salvaje a lot, and I'm like, what? That sounds awful.
Salvaje.
Salvaje.
Yeah. Is it Salvaje or Salvaje?
Salvaje.
Right,
But
perfect.
I break it down phonetically for people,
got it.
Salvaje.
Yeah. That's great. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm a native Tejana. It's hard to just like come off the bat. I was a military photojournalist for a number of years. I did that for about 12 years. Now I'm here. I'm back home in Texas. My last assignment was out of New York. I worked for a forward arm of the Pentagon in New York City. We did a lot of media brokerage. So watching what's happening right now is really interesting. Like the content that you're creating, the work that you're doing is gonna be the future, to be honest. Like I think it's gonna be the future of journalism. I think that you've seen like social media influencers, micro influencers, and I think journalism overall, like media, has lost a lot of public trust, and we're gonna start to see independent thought leaders amongst the people, and that now everyone has an opportunity to be a broadcaster, which could be scary for some, but also super empowering for the people. So I'm kind of excited about it, especially like what I love about your podcast and when I first found your content was like the story that you did about going back to Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just so beautiful. And it was like, damn, I don't get to see content like that often on my own, socials, because the algorithm hasn't prioritized it for me. And have we historically had the resources to be able to do it? No.
Right.
You have to have a lot of money to be in broadcast news.
Yeah.
That's how and even when I was working for the Pentagon, it was like, damn, this shit is tough. I'm
hard.
like working for the top level of the government. I'm having a hard time talking to y'all. Yeah.
And bureaucracy is a big part of the Pentagon afterwards too. So there was
that
red tape,
right? Because I was like younger at the time, younger in the field. I'm much older now, but at the time it was my early 20s, and that was like 10, 15 years ago. Maybe 20 years ago. Getting too old, but we
no such thing. No such thing.
Especially when you're Latino.
You look fantastic. You look great.
But like what I was noticing then was this trend, and it was difficult. Why were we out there? Because the Pentagon officials at the time had noticed that having conversations with our legislators was ineffective in DC, which you think you're in the same building or close to each other, in Crystal City, Washington, DC. You think you can just knock on doors and talk to legislators, but a lot of our people were having a hard time communicating the stories of like the everyday soldier, the everyday airman, the everyday warrior, and how they were contributing, where they came from. Like so many Latinos are in the military, a lot of Tejanos, a lot from California. And we weren't being able to communicate with our legislators in DC. The best way to get to them was actually through New York, through the media. So, and we're finding that was like 20 years ago. Now look at how it's influenced, like Joe Rogan influenced an entire election,
right?
and a bro-oligarchy that has developed.
Bro-oligarchy is good.
Yeah, they were all on these podcasts. Like we saw this all coming over time. So I always say, if you can see it coming over time, if it's predictable, you can adjust fire. Right. So, but I left that. I retired out of the military. They medically retired me, so I'm a medically retired disabled vet, and they weren't sure exactly what was going on towards the end. I had like symptoms of a stroke, and I actually, as verbal as I am, I had like lost speech and was slurring words, lost communication, have some neuropathy issues, and some crazy chronic migraines is what they called it. Okay. And their solution was I had really great docs because I was in New York City. Right. So the doc at NYU, who was a neurologist, was like, I have to level with you. There's a lot about the human brain we don't understand. Here's what we can do. Let's try a couple different medications to see how that can maybe affect your performance or if it helps at all. So he wanted to do like little roulette of like different medications without knowing specifically which ones would help. And then also offered, he was like, we can also biopsy your brain, which is like they're going to slice into your brain, take a little piece out and study it. And I just thought, like, what, whoa, you're telling me you don't know a lot about neuroscience, but you want me to let you cut into my brain. Like, and we all know you're one of the best docs. So I like put the no, that was a no.
You pumped the brakes.
That was a hard pass. And I went back to a plant that I had grown up around. You know, I grew up in the projects for a part of my time. I grew up in the hood, and cannabis, marijuana was always like something that the community was using, some too much to hide from problems, but many to self-treat. Right. And even if you weren't in the projects in Mexico, we had the plant, we were using it in tinctures, medicines. Like, it's been a part of indigenous culture for a really long time. So I tried cannabis and it solved the problems. It blew my mind. And then I really got into the research of what is the deal with prohibition? What are those early roots? And learned a lot. A lot of it actually has to do with being Mexicano. So now I went from working with Uncle Sam, now working in cannabis and psychedelics. So
what a transition.
Yeah.
What city did you grow up in that you said that you grew up in the projects?
So I grew up in the Panhandle, actually, up north in North Texas. So my parents split up, and I grew up split between two houses between Minnesota and Texas. So my dad is a gringo. I used to, like, when I was really little, used to say I was a Chicanqui, and people were like, what is that? What is a Chicanqui? And I was like, I'm half Chicana, I'm half honky. And I didn't know, like,
that's funny.
You know, it's the 80s, they say that stuff.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what, you know, Chicana or honky was. I just knew I was from both, and made up this Chicanqui.
That's good, though. That's good.
So my dad was up in Minnesota, but I bopped around Texas a lot. Like, I like to say my family's so dramatic, you know, on the Mexican side, that they had to go from the valley all the way to the Panhandle. Like, they had to split up that much just from the drama. Right. So we covered from Panhandle all the way down to the valley. And then I grew up in the projects up in North Texas, so where, you know, old Jim Crow South was really present. Oh. And still, like, in the 90s and 2000s, I know a lot of people think that the Jim Crow South was a part of after Reconstruction era, but that still very much was a part of our very recent history, and only now we're starting to really think about it. For
sure. I give this lecture to young people. Sorry, don't mean to cut you off, but I give the lecture to young people about how the Reagan era really affected low-income neighborhoods in major cities. So it makes sense why Jim Crow still has remnants in smaller towns.
Exactly.
As opposed to the Reaganomics that really, you know, impacted a lot of like bigger cities.
So you're looking at Reaganomics with big cities, and then you're looking at what followed after, also in the 90s, even under the Clinton administration, even with President Joe Biden. And just like a disclaimer up front, because I was in the military, I worked under 3 different administrations. So I worked for Bush, Obama, and Trump. Because you don't get a choice. Like, you're there to serve the nation. Correct. And it doesn't matter who holds the office. Yeah.
It's not a partisan arm.
Yeah, we're supposed to be a level of neutrality. Is that still happening? I am very concerned. Yeah. Who knows? We got some red flags. But
so I've got a couple questions. First off, thank you for shouting out that you watched our content and that you and that it really resonated with you. That means a lot to us, because we, for a long time, going back to your point about mainstream media, how hard it is to get out there, how hard it is to get your thoughts out there as somebody that doesn't have any kind of like legacy in media in general. That means a lot to us, because we started from nothing. I had a media company, and I did like photography and video for a lot of people in Houston. And then I was like, you know what, let me just like try my hand in it. And I invested a lot of money into trying to make sure that we can get something like this going. And then the goal was just to build community. And at first we just wanted to shit talk, but then eventually we got to the point where we were like, oh no, we should probably start like highlighting our experiences and things that we've gone through. And that video was actually the first video that really like broke us out and like gave us a lot of opportunity. So it didn't go like mega viral to where we're all of a sudden seeing like this great enormous success, but it got it got us enough of attention that now I can reach out to people, and they're much more willing to say, yeah, I'll sit down with you. And you're kind of proof of that.
Sure.
So thank you so much for that. That really does mean a lot to us. I really like what you said. You said independent thought leader. That's going on my resume from now on. I'm like, I never classified myself as that, but from now on, like, I'm independent thought leader is what my.
I think there's something to be said about like starting from shit talking too, though.
Yeah.
Because as I have like been involved in different projects, whether it was in cannabis, whether it was for the military, whether as a journalist, or I did also before going all the way full throttle in cannabis, because you can't just go straight in.
Right.
I was a business consultant out in New York. And there's something to be said about noticing a problem, talking shit about it for a while, and like gathering around the water cooler. But then you have to get to a point where you're like, hey, so what are we gonna do about that?
Yeah. We're done. We're done. We're done talking about or like making fun of it or being lighthearted.
And sometimes you have to, man, because if you don't laugh, you're gonna
for me,
cry.
it was like self-deprecation. It's like you have to. There's something. There's probably on a psychological level, right? There's like a certain level of emotional intelligence that you have whenever you're willing to be self-deprecating, because you understand that there's a problem, you're willing to make fun of it, and whether it really affects you or like it's neutral or whatever it is, it shows that you've come to terms with a little bit of like the reality that's going on, as opposed to just acting like it doesn't exist, right? So and then that seems to be a problem that our community suffers with a lot, or just in general, or maybe not even our community, maybe just low-income communities in general.
Maybe it's just communities that are facing tough times, because I think tough times will make you like straighten the lip a little bit. Yeah.
So that is kind of how we started. And I'm proud of it. But I really like your terminology. I like the recognition that it takes coming from that to be able to kind of have an impactful voice, or at least at least have some credence to your voice whenever you're talking about it.
I think it's a huge difference. Like, I think that'll be something that we learn to distinguish with thought leaders is who's speaking from a lived experience, and then who's just using ChatGPT to come up with whatever talking points are trendy right now to slap the audio on it and get their views, and there's really no substance.
Right.